Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining me now is Frank Schaeffer, religious reform activist and author of Why I Am an Atheist Who Believes in God. Frank, let me play for you. We don't play a ton of Trump on the show, but let me play you his comments about bringing the country back to work by Easter. Here he is.
I'd love to have it open by Easter. Okay, I would love to have it open by Easter. I will tell you that right now. I would love to have that. It's such an important day for other reasons, but I'll make it an important day for this too.
So I think Easter Sunday, and you'll have packed churches all over our country. I think it would be a beautiful time.
When everything we're doing.
Who suggested that?
I just thought it was a beautiful time. It would be a beautiful time, a beautiful timeline.
So that was
it's a great day.
All right, your response, Frank.
Well, first of all, Joy, good health to you and the whole MSNBC family. This is a time when you feel love for people, and we say hello on the street. So hello to you, and God bless you, Joy. Thank you. We are at a time now when thank you. We're at a time now when the naked lick-spittle enablement of Donald Trump by his evangelical followers is more horribly obvious than ever. Franklin Graham, his big supporter, told him to call a national day of prayer. And of course, we know Trump would never do this by himself. We have all the pieces that you played of people trying to cash in on this, to push their anti-gay homophobia. And we also see that the magical thinking for evangelicals that allows them, for instance, to deny climate change, to deny scientific evidence on gay people being born that way, to deny so many things that we know from any common sense point of view, let alone a scientific point of view, are true. They have been nurtured from birth to accept alternative facts. They are perfect dupes for someone who calls everything fake news that he doesn't agree with. So when we come to this time of COVID-19 overtaking our country, a literal life and death issue, we see two things very clearly, Joy. One is the utter moral bankruptcy of this leader who pits himself against governors trying to save their people, as you had in your last segment. And the second is the utter moral bankruptcy of evangelicals, the white evangelical voter, having rented out Jesus to this moronic monster who, in this time of crisis, far from being our Winston Churchill leading us to freedom against the Axis in Germany and others, basically tells people my age, those pushing their 70s, that we might as well do what the Jews did in World War II, that the Nazis told them to do. Put on a yellow star, identify yourself as old, forget care for you guys. We're not going to make more respirators, especially not for governors that we don't like. Just go off and die so the stock exchange numbers go up and I look good. And the fact of the matter is that is not an exaggeration. We have Republican governors. We have people who are in positions of power and Donald Trump trying to push a business as usual agenda. And instead of evangelicals standing up and saying, wait a minute, we bought into your candidacy because you're supposed to be the quote unquote pro-life president. We have now a pro-death president who would rather have his economic numbers go up chasing a 2020 re-election than save lives. And the evangelicals are going along with it and giving him cover. This whole Easter nonsense was just simply more currying favor with that base. A footnote maybe, but very telling.
Before one thinks that this is simply, one man's sort of opinion, there is a New York Times piece that says the religious right's hostility to science is crippling our coronavirus response. It reads, today, the hardcore of climate deniers is concentrated among people identified as religiously conservative Republicans. This denial of science and critical thinking among religious ultra-conservatives now haunts the American response to the coronavirus crisis, and that is by one Catherine Stewart. The question I guess I have, Frank, is whether these beliefs, this almost religious belief in Trump himself as the savior, does it survive actual deaths in your own church, in your own family? This virus will not stop at the door of these evangelical churches. It'll come inside. When people they know, when their own families, when people start getting sick, can this unshakable belief in Trump survive that? Will they start to believe the science when it's literally right in front of them?
You know, I'm reminded, Joy, of the passage from the Bible where Christ says, though one come back from the dead, they would not believe. Let me tell you a parallel in answer to your question that I hope I'm wrong on. Think of all the churches that were shot up by gun-toting fools recently, even one in Texas, where gun laws are so permissive that you're surprised that people don't give you a gun at birth. Did the evangelical majority say, wait a minute, they're shooting up the churches now, maybe we won't support the NRA anymore? No, they did not. They are so in love with the gospel of hatred, gun ownership, protect yourself against your neighbor, keep the foreigners out, lock babies in cages. They have denied the Lord Jesus Christ in his teaching to the point where there is no redemption for the hardest of the hardcore. Now, does that mean that individuals won't peel away? Yes. And I appeal to my Christian brothers and sisters, rethink your support for a man that would dangle respirators over a governor who disagrees with him, and turn back to the teachings of Jesus away from this man.
Yeah, and the teachings are very clear. That is the poor, the least of these, the foreigner, that we should be protecting. As an old Methodist, that's what I was brought up to believe. Frank Schaeffer, thank you so much. I really appreciate your advocacy. God bless you. Be safe.
It is Monday, the 30th of March of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, we sliced and diced, and we made quite a one-pan concoction for you with what was left from the weekend, and there was a lot. Got to tell you. And Trump is out early today with, was that a presser or was that just an interview with Fox again? Regardless, apparently 100 to 200,000 people dead. That's a damn good job for that guy. That's A+ material by his graduation. Yeah, he knows how to grade them because he is the master grader, after all. Joan McCarter posts every morning when she gets up, 25th Amendment now. Okay? Maybe we ought to start considering it much more seriously. Before it was sort of I kind of looked at it as, that's nice. But it's not really, shall we say, doable. And I would say it continues to not be doable because we have Pence there and the rest of the sycophants. And I'm looking at you, Pompeo. Jesus. All of them. Every single last one of them. And to get the 25th Amendment to work, you need some cabinet members to step up to the plate. And I don't think they're ready for it yet. Even now, 200,000 dead. And that's a great job. A great job. I just remember what was said to Obama by Trump directly during the swine flu. Uh-huh. All right. Well, no one could have imagined. No one could have imagined any of this happening. Actually, we imagined all of it. Right down to the calamity that we are experiencing right now and Trump's response to it. We warned you. Well, not you guys. We warned them. All right? Because I don't really think they are listening to this show. They might be trying to figure a way to silence it completely. Boy, did you see that Zuckerberg is going to give how much? Some ungodly amount of money to independent local journalism. Well, why did Zuckerberg be a party to censoring Netroots Radio on Facebook for engaging in legal political speech, I might add? Because some right-wingers complained Facebook that legal political speech, yeah, so what? There were some F-words in there. We're in America. I know that your censors are spread around the world and you denote the fact that in other parts of the world they use their local guides to be able to guide them on censoring your free speech. Well, free speech in that it's not being sanctioned by government. But some local person from a very conservative, religious conservative area, some part in the world where saying F the leader is considered to be, well, threatening speech. So taking part in protected political speech and some right-wingers who continue to be the most vile continue on that platform. And even if a liberal were to complain about it, nothing is done. But liberals tend not to complain about it because, hey, it's a soapbox. Get up on the soapbox. Be an idiot. It's okay. Because when I get up on the soapbox, maybe I'll be an idiot. But as soon as a liberal gets up on the soapbox and in a sarcastic manner tries to mimic what the winger has just spoken about, you'll be treated like Yamish Alcindor. Yeah, you people with your dark skin just attacking me. Why are you not positive about everything that I do? Mr. President, I'm just quoting you directly from your interview with Sean Hannity. You fake news. How dare you bring my own words against me? How dare you? Man, and this is on live TV for the world to see. And the world is seeing it, except his sycophants consider it to be the height of leadership. That's how far we have fallen. We better vote them out in November. And it's going to be tough because voting is going to be clamped down and the coronavirus is going to be the excuse. And we know that. Just like the EPA, as we reported late last week, has decided, well, we don't need to enforce any environmental laws during a pandemic. I mean, if people are going to be poisoned by a virus, who cares about the air and the water? Who cares about breathing asbestos? Yeah. Trump is complaining that maybe doctors and nurses have been stealing the masks. Maybe they've been stealing the ventilators. Which, if you put that into the Trump translator, it means that he is stealing masks and ventilators as we speak right now. Speaking of which, he sent 17 tons, or was it more? I think it's 17 tons of medical equipment, gowns, masks, etc., to China back in February. When he was saying to Americans, it's a hoax. The virus is a hoax. It's a Democratic hoax to keep me from being reelected. So he sent all that material to China. And it was revealed, or at least reported more in full, that he had done so, and it was a bit of an outrage over the weekend. Why would he do that? Because when they send it back, which they are doing right now, Trump collects the tariff. Do you think that's going into the U.S. Treasury? No. The U.S. taxpayer is paying Trump directly for material he sent to China to send back so he could jack up the price and get a tariff. This is what they do during a pandemic. No wonder he wants to have a line item veto on the stimulus package that X's out congressional oversight about who, where, and how the money is being spent. Mobsters do that. Mobsters do that. Cutie pie wise guys. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, that was Frank Schaefer, who I refer to as a U.S. religious leader, because he is, blasting white evangelicals. And I got to tell you, it's not evangelicals. It is white evangelicals we are talking about for their utter moral bankruptcy and having rented Jesus to this moronic monster Trump during this time of crisis. Yeah, they rented out Jesus. I don't know if they rented. I think they leased. Then, on the rest of the menu, the coronavirus pandemic makes it harder for campaigns to ask for money, but only if you're not the GOP, because they ask for money in droves when a pandemic or any kind of crisis occurs that they can blame on the Democrats, and they do. Local governments and park managers worry about following Trump's orders to keep the national parks open during the pandemic. They worry about it. Trump says, keep it open. And they got to figure out social distancing. And I guess you could do that in a wide expanse of the park. Maybe. And Nevada distilleries are turning spirits into sanitizer. I got to tell you a little secret. You don't really need to add the aloe vera and make it into hand sanitizer. Pour some cheap gin on your hands, wipe it for 20 seconds or more, and then take a swig. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where France used 2 high-speed trains and a German military plane to move critically ill coronavirus patients in an effort to ease the pressure on overwhelmed hospitals in eastern France. And with infections rising, Moscow has tightened its coronavirus rules. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Hopefully you'll notice that Patreon link, and if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It doesn't take much. How about the price of a espresso type coffee drink, if you could afford sending us that amount once a month, even during this time of crisis, I would say crises, it would be greatly appreciated, even more so now, because bills don't go down even during pandemics. Hopefully they'll continue to remain the same, but generally everything goes up. And they go up anyway, independent of a pandemic. And your generosity allows us to keep ahead, fly under the radar, because as long as you pay your bills, we found out, generally they'll let you do what you've been doing. Unless you're on Facebook and some right-winger can complain. They do that there. regardless, thank you for your generosity. That generosity has allowed us to fulfill our civic duty as Resistance Radio and as the founders originally intended about an eon ago. That generosity has allowed us to fulfill that civic duty, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, truly. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. And Tom takes care of that, plus so much more. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary, as long as they're still called diaries. I think in beta, maybe they're not going to be diaries anymore. Blog format, they're going to get rid of the blog format. It's the only one left. Don't do it. Anyway, I do post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Link that up on social media, except I can't do it on Facebook. Now, we're able to get these posts on our Netroots Radio Facebook page. But because I am an administrator there, now apparently, since I had so many people wishing me happy birthday last week, I think they locked down being able to share on my page. Because we were doing a little clandestine sharing, and with team members, Kelly, thank you, posting on my timeline. Well, we're still able to do it on the Netroots Radio Facebook page. But somehow Zuckerberg and the algorithm has stopped any sharing on my page. And this is all because of anti-abortionist Trump brats who can get away with it and have. All right. Anyway, I do post that all up about 10 minutes before showtime, and hopefully you get it. Now, if you would like to follow if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Alrighty, let's dive into this first offering, because we could whine every day, and I do, about Zuckerberg. But, come on. It gets a little old after a while. I think I have 16 days left. We'll see if I get anything else tacked on top of that. Because I've had 3 suspensions all in a row in an increasing amount of time. Okay. They are censoring the free press. At the same time, they're supposed to be giving money out to the free press. Maybe I should sue. Or the station. Okay. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Brian Slodisky. I'm sorry, it is Brian Slodisco. White House candidates aren't usually bashful about asking supporters for money. But as the coronavirus upends everyday life, inundating hospitals, tanking financial markets, and putting 3.3 million people out of work, Donald Trump and his likely Democratic rival, Joe Biden, suddenly find themselves navigating perilous terrain. Well, with Trump, it doesn't matter, because he's getting money from the gated community crowd, if you know what I mean. And Biden, by and large, I know everybody says, he's a corporate Democrat. By and large, he's getting his money from smaller donations, individual donations, capped at $2,500 a year, I might add. Whereas Trump gets money in amounts you can't even track. Because apparently, when you're a Republican president, anything you do for your reelection is legal. Even if it means taking illegal money. Because no one can know about it. Because to know about it would make you illegal. Anyway, Biden, by and large, is not getting the largesse that Trump is getting. And Biden, by and large, is following the rules, which Democrats tend to do. And that's why it always puts us behind the 8 ball. But I'd much rather be behind the 8 ball following the rules. Well, I don't know. Maybe we need to bend them a little bit. How about this? How about get rid of the people who keep breaking the rules? We do have a dynamic for that now, don't we? Well, what used to be a routine request for political cash could now come across as tone-deaf or tacky. Well, I wouldn't put that above Trump. Now, come on. tone deaf and tacky. The Trump name emblazoned in these giant fake gold lettering on every building he has. Look, if you were to look up the word tacky, the first part of the definition would be Trump. I'm sure. And if it's not, it ought to be. With a recession potentially on the horizon, there's a question of whether wealthy donors are in a giving mood and whether grassroots supporters who chip in small amounts will still have the wherewithal to keep at it. I think wealthy donors are pretty much with Trump no matter what. And they have to make sure he's there or else they might have to also experience the world as the rest of us do. Anonymous worker bees out of the Associated Press by way of the American Independent bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. The Trump administration is sticking with its crowd-friendly waiver of entrance fees at national parks during the coronavirus pandemic, as managers at some parks try and fail to keep visitors a safe distance, and communities appeal for a shutdown at other parks that are still open. While the Interior Department agreed this week to requests from local managers of Yellowstone and some other iconic national parks to close, others remained open and newly free of charge. Let's go. In Arizona, local governments and the Navajo Nation were waiting for an answer, and that was on Thursday for their request earlier in the week for federal officials to shut down Grand Canyon as cases of the coronavirus grow in surrounding areas, and they still have not heard. We think it's just in the best interest of the community, the visitors, and the staff, said Lena Fowler, a supervisor of Coconino County, which includes the Grand Canyon. What we're really concerned about is making sure everyone is safe. Well, Trump doesn't care. 100, 200,000 dead? No biggie. Just a trifle. Park officials announced on Thursday evening that 3 of the canyon's most popular trails, Bright Angel, South Kaibab, and North Kaibab, were being temporarily closed, with some of their operations being modified. Don't tell Trump, he'll tell you to open them up. The National Parks Conservation Association called the administration's decision to keep the Grand Canyon open beyond reckless. Well, of course. Has there been anything responsible with what this administration is doing? They're deconstructing the administrative state. I think that action by itself would be considered reckless. Sort of like shrinking government down to the size where you could drown it in a bathtub. I consider that to be rather reckless myself. Great Smoky Mountain National Park was one of those whose request to close was granted by the Interior Department earlier last week. There, the number of visitors surged over the previous year's figures despite infection risks, with about 30,000 people entering the park each day, and each one of those going out and infecting possibly how many? 3, 4 other people each. The day after the closure announcement, park employees learned that an employee had tested positive for COVID-19. So in other words, 30,000 park visitors potentially infected by COVID-19 are going home. anonymous worker bees from the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Several alcohol distilleries in Nevada, unable to make liquor under current coronavirus shutdowns, are turning their attention to another product to help soothe customers. They're combining their key ingredient, ethanol, which kills germs, with aloe vera or other chemicals to make hand sanitizer. Wait a second, aloe vera is not a chemical! The Centers for Disease Control website reports that alcohol-based solutions of at least 70% alcohol are effective for disinfecting. Distilleries such as Seven Troughs, Farino, Verdi Local Distillery, and The Depot, along with Damon Industries, are all ramping up production of sanitizer. Seven Troughs in Sparks, Nevada, is already turning out sanitizer. 175 gallons last week. Wow, that'll go really far, won't it? Most of which is going to Renown Hospital, as well as to first responders. Tom Adams, owner of Seven Troughs, said hand sanitizer is a critical supply. Seven Troughs is operating 24 hours a day to produce ethanol for Renown. Ethanol is combined with glycerol and hydrogen peroxide to make the sanitizer. Tom Adams, the owner of Seven Troughs, said the World Health Organization provides the guidelines to make it. I never thought in a million years that we would be making something that supplies our health system. Well, if you used to be a barber back in the 1800s, you would have been using your spirits to cure people all the time because you were the only doctor around for miles and miles and miles. Many of the local distilleries have had to lay off employees due to the statewide shutdown of all non-essential business. One problem so far has been obtaining materials needed to make and distribute sanitizer, such as plastic and glass bottles, because they come from China. Isn't that weird how that happened? Now, federal government has loosened restrictions on producing sanitizer, and there is no alcohol tax on it. Well, in that case, I'm buying some Saint Germain gin and calling it sanitizer. Do not charge me the alcohol tax on this medical product, please. All right, we better get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Visible Chills. For fans of the H.G. Wells classic or any of its film adaptations, Saw director Lee Wannell keeps the basic premise of the novel with an overlay of triumphant women's empowerment. In this telling, a woman, Cecilia, is facing the fallout from an abusive relationship with a controlling tech tycoon named Adrian, who's been keeping her prisoner at his high-tech Bay Area mansion. After a riveting escape one night with the help of her sister, Cecilia seeks refuge with her friend James, played by Aldous Hodge, who happens to be a detective, and James's daughter, Sydney. We all know that Adrian, who's into optics research, is going to try and find her. And when we learn of his death by an apparent suicide and his leaving her a large sum of money, the stage is set. Starting with subtle hints, the now invisible Adrian slowly ramps up the control and gaslighting to make the movie a true modern thriller. We learn Cecilia could be any woman. She's highly accomplished with a successful career before Adrian, and her description as to how he slowly comes to take over her life is as scary as any of the graphic horror. Elizabeth Moss's Cecilia carries the movie. Moss, who's best known for her work on Mad Men and The Handmaid's Tale, is brilliant and physical in this one. She's not just convincing, you feel her desperation at not being believed, and you jump with her when the jump tricks come, and they do. Oliver Jackson Cohen doesn't get nearly the screen time he deserves, but nonetheless makes a compelling and chilling villain. Evil hiding in plain sight is more than just a metaphor in The New Invisible Man, but save for some cheesy dialogue and some plot holes, this is definitely one to catch. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Scientific American podcast editor Steve Mirsky, and here's a short piece from the March 2020 issue of the magazine in the section called Advances, Dispatches from the Frontiers of Science, Technology, and Medicine. The article is titled Quick Hits, and it's a rundown of some non-coronavirus stories from around the globe, compiled by assistant news editor Sarah Lewin Fraser. From the Dominican Republic, a sunken museum at La Caleta Underwater National Park will preserve in place a ship that sank in 1725, complete with real and replica artifacts kept underwater for people to explore. Submerged artifacts often degrade faster when removed from the sea. From Greenland, new simulations indicate that a rocky valley detected under the island's ice sheet may contain a 1,600-kilometer-long subterranean river flowing from central Greenland to its northern coast. From Greece, archaeologists uncovered gold, jewels, and beads in a large building on the now uninhabited Minoan island of Chrysi, a location that about 3,500 years ago was devoted to making purple dye from sea snails called murex. From England, researchers found 1,700-year-old chicken eggs, along with other ancient objects, in a waterlogged pit in southeastern England. A few eggs broke during extraction, releasing a sulfurous smell, but one remained intact, making it the only complete egg found from Roman Britain. Well, you can't do archaeology without breaking some eggs. From Australia, to help boost Sydney Harbour's endangered seahorse population, scientists bred baby seahorses in an aquarium and built crab trap-like undersea hotels to protect them as they adapt to the wild. And from Antarctica, scientists test drove a meter-long wheeled rover that streamed live views of the depths as it rolled along the underside of Antarctic ice. The buoyant rover for under-ice exploration could someday explore frozen-over seas on worlds such as Jupiter's moon Europa. That was Quick Hits by Sarah Lewin Fraser.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There are several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. One of the main purposes of government is to protect our freedom. The First Amendment to our Constitution protects our freedom of expression. This is what the First Amendment says about freedom of expression. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition government for a redress of grievances. As you can see, this section of the First Amendment includes several important freedoms. Freedom of expression is freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly, and of petition. The right of assembly is the right to meet with others to discuss your beliefs, ideas, or feelings. The right to petition means to ask the government to take action or change its policies or to ask for a redress of grievances, that is, for the government to grant a remedy for a perceived wrong. It is important to understand that the First Amendment limits the powers of Congress. It prevents Congress from placing unreasonable and unfair limits on freedom of expression. That is why the amendment begins with the phrase, Congress shall make no law. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This Civil Liberties Minute, one in a series on the coronavirus, COVID-19, focuses on the plight of people who are or may be locked up. I'm Bill Newman. In responding to this public health crisis, it is essential to plan for the vulnerable population of people who are jailed or imprisoned by the criminal justice system or are detained by ICE. Towards the end of protecting the health of those inside the razor wire and those employees who work there, as well as those who are on the outside, the ACLU of Massachusetts has recommended that state and local law enforcement reduce to the lowest possible number those people who are newly incarcerated. Whenever possible, arrest should be avoided in favor of, for example, when appropriate, discretionary non-enforcement or a civil remedy, or a citation which requires a person to appear in court instead of being immediately arrested. As for the institutions, there must at a minimum be adequate training and education, as well as, of course, medical care and cleaning supplies. And ICE should halt new and unnecessary immigration detentions to limit the spread of the virus in jails and detention centers and to limit the hardship that the virus will cause for immigrant communities. Here's the common denominator. At this time in particular, we should not allow those who are or could be locked up to be out of mind simply because they, for many people, are out of sight. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1930. That was the day that ground was broken on what would become one of the worst workplace disasters in U.S. history. At least 476 and possibly more than 700 men died from a disease called silicosis. The project was called the Hawk's Nest Tunnel. It was part of a hydroelectric project by the company Union Carbide. The aim was to harness the energy of the New River in West Virginia to power a metals plant. Workers cut through 3 miles of solid rock under the Gauley Mountain to divert water for the project. Most of the workers were black men recruited from the South. Much of the rock they were cutting through had a very high silica content. Despite the fact that the dangers of silica dust were well known, the company ignored standard safety practices. It is safer to drill through high silica content using a wet drill method, which cuts down on the dust. The project manager opted to use dry drilling to save time on the project. They also failed to provide the needed ventilation or respirators for the workers. Men desperate for work during the Great Depression flocked to the project. In all, nearly 5,000 men labored on the tunnel. A congressional subcommittee that investigated the disaster found that the whole driving of the tunnel was begun, continued, and completed with grave and inhumane disregard of all consideration for the health, lives, and future of the employees. For many, work on the Hawks Tunnel was a death sentence. People with silicosis die a slow, agonizing, suffocating death. The companies involved in the project faced litigation, but in the end, they only paid out $200,000 in damages. Some that were impacted received as little as $30 for their lives.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting only a high of 52. Wow. And lots of rain, about a quarter inch of rain today and another quarter inch of rain tonight. Steady rain continuing this morning, showers continuing this afternoon. Winds are out of the southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. And tonight, periods of rain with a low of 43. Winds out of the southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. And about a quarter inch of rain, as I stated. Tomorrow, looks like we'll have a high of 50, overnight low in the mid-30s. With steady light rain in the morning, showers continuing in the afternoon with the winds out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We have doubled the amount of people who have been infected with coronavirus here in Jackson County, Oregon, where Rogue River resides. Went from 4 to 8 in just 2 days. So that's just reporting, and I think they're a little behind, but that's the way that goes. So far, no deaths attributed to coronavirus in the county. Grass pollen is rated at low. The air quality index in the region is rated good at 36 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 5. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.01 inches. Visibility is down to 6 miles. And relative humidity is at 88%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 47 and mostly cloudy with lots of coronavirus. Paris is 50 degrees and sunny with even more coronavirus. Rome is 63 and fair with a lot of coronavirus, and it may be going up again. Kyiv is 43 and mostly cloudy, and mostly you don't know how much coronavirus is there because of Vlad. Kabul is 47 and cloudy with coronavirus. Hong Kong is 67 and mostly cloudy with lots of coronavirus. Tokyo is 48 and cloudy with coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 66 and clear, and they've clamped down on their country because they have coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy with, stay in place by order because of coronavirus. And New York is 45 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy, with a threat from Trump. He's going to quarantine the whole state of New York because of coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. France used 2 high-speed trains and a German military plane to move more than 36 critically ill coronavirus patients to ease the pressure on overwhelmed hospitals in eastern France. The Grand Est region was the first in France to be hit by a wave of coronavirus infections that has rapidly moved westwards to engulf the greater Paris region, where hospitals are desperately adding intensive care beds to cope with the influx. The number of coronavirus deaths in France since March 1st climbed 13% to 2,606 on Sunday yesterday, while the total number of confirmed infections rose above 40,000. That's 40 with a K. The specially adapted trains carried 36 patients to the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region in the southwest, where a line of ambulances waited outside Bordeaux stationed. We urgently need to relieve congestion in the region's intensive care units. Francois Braun, head of the paramedics, told RTL Radio. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe warned France's 67 million people that the toughest weeks in the fight against the epidemic were still to come, as the number of patients on life support rose to more than 4,600. Well, that's not positive thinking. Maybe he should talk to Trump. Hospitals were racing to add intensive care facilities, sometimes taking ventilators out of operating theaters as they built makeshift units. Student medics are being drafted, and retired doctors are returning to wards. President Emmanuel Macron has deployed the army to help move the sick, while the field hospital has been set up in the eastern city of Mulhouse.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Maria Kiselova of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Moscow authorities will impose tighter restrictions today on residents in an attempt to contain the spread of the new coronavirus. Muscovites will only be allowed to go out to buy food or medicines at their nearest shop, get urgent medical treatment, walk the dog, or take out the trash. Those needing to go to work will also be allowed to leave their flats, and authorities will introduce a system of passes in the coming days. Russia has been relatively lightly hit so far with 9 deaths and 1,534 cases, but it recorded 270 new infections in the past day, mostly because they're suppressing the true numbers, just like Trump is, and that's what maybe they talked about in Helsinki. Maybe. Earlier on Sunday, yesterday, Sobyanin, the mayor of Moscow, said the coronavirus outbreak had entered a new phase as the number of cases exceeded 1,000 in the capital, and complained that many residents took recommendations to stay home very lightly. The head of Russia's Orthodox Church exhorted believers to pray at home and urged people to adhere strictly to authorities' instructions before someone dies in our families. Refrain from visiting churches, the Patriarch Kirill said, even though Orthodox services went ahead, including one led by him. Hey, God is omnipresent. You don't need to go to church, but the idea of going to church is to be around other people. But now it might be wrong, and you might kill somebody, like your friend or a family member. Russia has halted international flights, closed borders, announced a non-working week from this last weekend, and closed shops and entertainment venues in Moscow and some other regions. The mayor said Muscovites were still going out. At least 52,000 people took walks in city parks on Saturday, and many elderly people made long trips on public transportation. The situation with the spread of coronavirus has entered a new phase, Sobyanin wrote. A new example of miserable Italian and Spanish cities, even New York, where tens of hundreds of people die every day, is in front of everyone's eyes. Deny it, and it's still going to get you. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.